tuning in to our broadcast today. May God bless you as a result of it. I'm reading from 1 John chapter number 3. I'd like to begin reading in verse number 10. 1 John chapter 3 and verse number 10. In this the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. The word manifest is made visible. Whosoever doth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother. For this is the message that you've heard from the beginning, that we should love one another. So one of the manifestations of loving God is that you love your brother. Now he begins in verse 12 to give us a manifestation of those that are children of the devil. Not as Cain, who was of that wicked one and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his works were evil and his brother's righteous. Now, if I read my text correctly, one of the manifestations of the children of God is that we love each other. Jesus said, people shall know you're my disciples because you love one another. But one of the manifestations of a child of the devil is hate and murder. And you find that in verse number 12. I've been announcing all week that I was going to preach on an issue and a subject that has happened to our country that I believe, unfortunately, is going to be repeated. I'm preaching this morning on the subject, why did Stephen Paddock pull the trigger? Mr. Paddock was born April 9th, 1953 in Clinton, Iowa. Some of his life he grew up in Arkansas, but most of it he was raised in California. Mr. Paddock was the oldest of 4 sons. When Paddock was only 7 years old, his dad was arrested for bank robbery. And in 1969, Paddock's dad broke out of the prison and went on the run, and for a period of time, he was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list when Stephen Paddock was only 16 years old. In 1977, Paddock graduated from a college with a business administration degree. Since that time in 1997, he has bought property, land, houses, and apartment complexes. The IRS has recorded that his income now is somewhere between $5 and $6 million a year. He was a prolific gambler. He was hooked on gambling. He had been married and divorced twice in his lifetime. And he reiterated not only from his own life and from his family that he had absolutely no religious affiliation. Mr. Paddock was just a normal American citizen until October 1st, 2017. For it was at that time from 10:05 to 10:15 p.m. that America was introduced to its largest mass murder attack that our nation has ever experienced. The Route 91 Harvest Music Festival was in full swing in Las Vegas with over 22,000 people gathered at the outside country western concert. Paddock was secured in his 32nd floor suite in the Mandalay Bay Hotel. In his room, Paddock had 23 rifles and 1 handgun, including an AR-15 and an AK-47. At 5 minutes after 10, he began to spray the music crowd with his artillery. For 10 solid minutes, bullets came hundreds at a time, nonstop, into the bloody crowd. Once the shooting stopped, 58 people lay dead on the ground, and over 549 were injured. Soon after that, the police broke down his motel door and found Paddock dead in the floor as a result of shooting himself in the mouth and in the head with the only handgun that he had in the room. And since October 4th, America is in shock. And we have went to bed and we have sat around our dinner tables and we've talked about it at school and we've talked about it on the job and we've asked ourselves this question: how can this happen? Why did he do it? And what motivated Mr. Paddock to be guilty of the largest mass shooting in the history of our land? Experts have now concluded, listen to this, that there is not one event responsible for Paddock's actions. They said to go through his life and say this is why he did what he did. They said there is no proof that one event in his life was responsible, which leads me to this as a psychologist, which means that it was a result of a combination of issues, events, any situations that caused him to do something that's beyond our imagination. Now, I'm going to mention to you 5 things that I believe contributed to what we saw October 1st in Las Vegas. I'm not saying because one or more of these are evident in your life that you're psycho, nor am I implying that you would ever do anything of this nature. But I think when this puzzle came together mixed with his thought patterns and his DNA, I believe this is what we will find drove him to do his evil deeds, as quoting the president. Let me mention just a few of them that we do know for sure. I have spent endless hours studying his life, his reputation, and his raising to make sure that I would deal with this in a biblical way. Number one thing that contributed to this is the fact that he came from a dysfunctional home. They have found something in the human body. It's a gene. It's an X chromosome. It's called a warrior gene. That gene was found in the blood of Paddock's father. They now say that the warrior gene was also found in the blood of Mr. Stephen Paddock as well. It is literally something that's inherited in the DNA that is passed down. It is a gene, and I don't want to get into great detail, but it doesn't mix with the other gene pool that's in the body, and because of that, it gives them an aggravated temper that sometimes goes out of control, and no medication and no doctor and no jail can subdue it. And you mix that with a dysfunctional home. Mr. Kelly, that did a survey on his home, a psychologist, said this: he grew up in an abusive, shame-ridden, low-esteem environment filled with depression, sleep disorders, and also unmanageable anger. See, that's why I preach so hard on the home. Sometimes people come to me and say, I don't know why you deal so much with the home, and why do you deal with marriage and raising your kids, because America is in such shambles when it comes to its marital estate. Well, I'm showing you one reason why I deal with the home all the time, because sometimes it affects these kids mentally. And I'm going to continue to preach on the home all the time. You listen to this: a child that's brought up in a divorced home is 5 times more likely to have mental trouble. They're more likely to have antisocial behavior. They're more likely to have emotional distress. They're more likely to suffer a bad education. They're more likely to have poor health. They're more likely to fall into crime. They're more likely to have addictions. They're more likely to live in poverty, and they're more likely to be violent in their lifetime because of the emotions inside of them of being brought up in a torn home, or thinking that nobody loves them and nobody cares, and they reach out and express that through being violent, through their anger, and through being agitated. So that's why I say no kid asked to be brought into this world. Neither did they have a vote on what family they were to be born into. That's why you mom and dads need to realize that your marriage is more than just you, and it's more than just him. There's little boys and little girls that are involved in this that deserve a loving, secure, solid home so they could be raised in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Last Sunday night, I sat up on this platform and I wept as I looked at 20-something young people in our choir singing in our youth choir. And the reason why the tears ran down my face, Brother Varner, was because out of all of our youth choir, only 3 of them live with their biological mother and father. That's why I want to say to you step-parents, whether you be a stepdad or a stepmom, you're not second class in this church. You've taken on responsibility that wasn't even yours. And you're giving a kid a decent chance at life. And I want to say to every one of you, I tip my hat to you. I salute you. I appreciate you loving them when somebody else didn't, and giving them a fair chance at life. We've got to get back to having homes that honor God. We've got to get back to hard-working men and women that love their children. Bless God, the average woman kisses her dog more than she does her children, and spends more time at the beauty shop gossiping than she does in the living room with her husband and her family. You might as well say amen, because I'm going to preach it whether you like it or not. And I'm saying to you, brother, I'm saying to you, we're raising a dysfunctional generation because they're coming out of dysfunctional homes. And it contributed to what we've seen on October 2nd. Second of all, the second reason why I believe this happened was not only because of his dysfunctional home, but because of his drive for lust. He would hire young prostitute women in Nevada. He hired one 27-year-old prostitute, and he was 64 years old himself. And he said this to her one night in their motel room, quote, "I was born bad," end of quote. He said to the prostitute, and I quote, "I love violent sex," end of quote. He boasted of having, and I quote, "bad blood," end of quote. She said in that room where he paid her $6,000 a night to be with him, that he was most excited when they relived a rape fantasy. Several times on different occasions, this 27-year-old prostitute was even fearful for her life, thinking that he would go so overboard with his fantasies that he would kill her. In Proverbs chapter 6 and verse number 26, the Bible declares that a dirty woman will take your wealth and lead you down to a piece of bread. Did you know murderers' thought patterns are linked to sexual misconduct? 81% of the people that murder young women and children sexually abuse their victims before they kill them. That's why I preach against pornography. That's why I preach against buying your HBO sex movies. That's why I preach against having filth in your house. That's why 67% of the men in our churches are hooked on some kind of pornography, because you can get it from the label of your phone. You don't have to go buy it in a store anymore. You don't have to order it from Mexico anymore. In the privacy of that cell phone connected to your belt right now, you can go anywhere in the world and do anything you want with anybody you want. But what you don't understand, honey, is you're creating a monster that you're never going to get out of your mind. And when it warps you sexually, it'll warp you socially. Amen. That's exactly right. These filthy Tommy Rock movies that are coming out of California, and we're finding out, by the way, all these movie producers, they're a bunch of sex perverts as well, running around grabbing women and talking filthy. I got news for every one of you pot-bellied pig faggots. I don't care how much money you got. You put your filthy hand on my wife, and I'll beat the living devil out of you till your mama don't even know you. That's exactly right. I'll beat you to death. You ain't putting your filthy, nasty hands on my wife. And the reason why people have become so bold in doing that out in public is because their mind is so filled with that trash. God destroyed the world during the days of Noah because man's imagination was on evil continually. It's sad that a woman can't even go out of her house and walk around the block anymore without a fear of being raped or molested or abused or kidnapped. That's pitiful. Kids can't even go out and play in the backyard anymore, afraid some pervert gonna jump a fence and take your kid. And by the way, I challenge all of you to get on your computer and look at all the sex perverts within a 5-mile radius of this church, and it'll blow your mind. And I know I'm on television, but I want every one of you perverts to hear me well. This is one church, bless God, you better bypass. If you think you're getting our kids, you're dumber than a box of rocks, honey. You at the wrong church. It's pitiful. Women ought to be respected. They ought to be honored. We ought to open the doors for them. Say yes, ma'am, when they talk to us, and show them some decency. And by the way, ladies, some of this stuff is your fault. Because if it's not for sale, you ought to quit advertising it. Running around half naked. Ain't got enough clothes on to make a union suit for a gnat. When Jesus said, let your light shine, he wasn't talking about your tail light. You need to put some clothes on. And by the way, from the backside, you ain't half as good looking as you think you are anyhow. You ought to be trying to cover it up, not show it to everybody. Amen. I know I'm preaching. I tell you one blessed thing, that ain't happening at this church. You think you're getting on this platform with your blue jeans and your butt and your boobs hanging out, you at the wrong church, honey. We keep this platform modest. I don't care. You can like it, lump it, bump it. You can leave anytime you want. This is a church house, not a whorehouse. The drive for sex, this sex-crazy society, that's all people talk about. You go to work, everybody's filthy. Everybody's got a dirty mouth. Everybody got to say something suggestive. And can you imagine what we're fighting, what's going on in the minds of this next generation that is coming on? And you combine that with an imbalanced home where they have no foundation, I promise you, this stuff's going to continue to happen in our country. Number 3, another reason why I believe he did what he did is because of drug abuse. He was hooked on something called benzodiazepine. Now, that is just a pharmaceutical word for Valium. He would take Valium and mix it with alcohol and abuse it. And one of the main side effects of Valium is if you mix it with alcohol, it produces effects of anger that are out of control. If you'll study Valium, you'll see that it is only to be used on short term. But this man had used it for years on end. Now, here's the thing about Valium that makes a lot of people mad, and I got people here that are on medications from doctors, and that's between you, God, and your doctor, and I'm not trying to intervene in that or to tell you what to take or what not to take. But Valium is a medicine that was really designed for anxiety. They found out later on it works with muscle spasms and sometimes even with mild seizures in children. But the dangers of Valium, not even mixed with liquor at all, is you get paranoid, suicidal, you have an impaired memory, and you do not have the ability to make rational judgment. Now, it's amazing to me, and I think all of my people need to know this because I've been screaming this for 25 years. For any and all of you, and we have, I don't know how many people here that are on sedative medicines for different conditions. But are you aware of the fact that the man or woman that's writing you your prescription has had 6 weeks mental training when they were being trained to be a physician? They only have 6 weeks of psychological training in all their years of being trained to be a physician. Now, I want to ask you a question. You're going to these regular medical doctors to get your pills for your emotions. I want to ask you a question. Would you let a kidney specialist work on you that's only been trained for 6 weeks? Would you let a heart surgeon do surgery on you that only had 6 weeks training? Would you let a digestive doctor deal with your intestines with only 6 weeks training? Would you let a liver specialist really deal with your liver with only 6? Would you let a dentist drill on you that only went to college and learned for 6 weeks? Would you let a doctor reset a broken bone that only had 6 weeks of training? Would you let a surgeon do surgery on you that only had 6 weeks of college? Would you really let a transplant doctor put a new set of lungs on you that only been trained 6 weeks in college? I don't even want a barber cutting my hair that's had 6 weeks experience. But yet I got people in this church that will go to a regular medical doctor that has absolutely zero training psychologically, and you will allow them to put you on medicines that they don't even know what they are, and they don't even know what the side effects are. And I know it's quiet, but I don't give a flip. You can take pills that big around. That's between you and God. But I'm going to tell you as your pastor. Isn't it funny that all of you that have diabetes, you go to a sugar specialist? Isn't it strange several people in our church have kidney problem? You go to a urologist or a kidney specialist. Isn't it strange that when you have a heart problem, you go to a cardiologist? Because you want somebody that's trained specifically in that field. Doesn't that make sense? But when it comes to a psychological problem, Brother Glenn, we run down to a medical doctor that's had 6 weeks training, and they put us on pills that have no earthly idea what they're going to. By the way, they don't even do a psychiatric evaluation. They don't even do a question-answer session. You tell them what's wrong with you, and they write these prescriptions. And that's why some of you doctors listening by the television, you're going to meet God for selling $11 billion worth of antidepressants to the American people, and many of them were not even needed in the first place. And some of you have become a prescription junkie because you found a doctor that's sorry enough to give you your medicine without even checking you to see if you needed it. If I was having any kind of emotional problem at all, whether it be anxiety, whether it be depression, I would get to a psychologist so fast. I know they've been to school, I know they've been trained, and I know they know what's going on with my thought patterns, and they can help me because they have been properly educated. Boy, didn't I knock the shout out of this crowd today. Makes me wonder how many of you are popping pills. Did you know the doctor that was giving him Valium was not even a doctor? He's an intern. He's not even complete with his medical field. But he's already got a prescription pad, and he's giving medicine to a psycho that's about to kill 58 people in Las Vegas, Nevada. I think our medical firms need to reevaluate just exactly what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be helping people. We're supposed to be getting people to recover. They're supposed to be better as a result of seeing us. Oh, yeah, I know I'm preaching. And some of you are turning off the television, but that's all right. But I tell you what kind of generation we got. Every time something don't go your way or you don't feel good or you don't like something, you want to run to the prescription and take you another pill to make you feel better and get away from the realities of life. And if that's the way you want to live, you can live that way. But I'm going to tell you, Jesus came that you might have life and have it more abundantly. That's what Jesus said. You mix a busted home with a sex pervert and hooked on medicine, you better believe you got a cocked shotgun ready to go off anytime, anywhere, with anybody. Number 4, I believe the reason why his chemistry came together and he killed so many people was because of his devotion to financial greed. You know, the Bible said in 1 Timothy chapter 6 and verse 10 that the love of money is the root of all evil. The word evil means wickedness, ungodly. It means to afflict. It means to be bad or to do harm to others. Did you know if you put a D at the beginning of the word evil, you have the word devil? And the devil is behind the love of money. Now, there's nothing wrong with having money. The root of evil is not having money. The root of evil is loving money. There's nothing wrong with you having money. It's when money has you that it becomes a god and it becomes evil. Amen. That's good preaching, Brother Kid. He was a high-stakes gambler. He had not worked a full-time job in 30 years. He was an airplane pilot and owned 2 single-engine planes. Sometimes when he sat down in the casinos, he would gamble for 14 hours at a time without leaving his seat. They have proven that being hooked on gambling produces instability, overspending, hoarding, and moral evil. If you took the love and greed for money out of this country, our penitentiaries would be empty and our homes would be put back together. I say to you, the God of this country is green, and it's called a dollar bill. People will kill you for $20 if they need it. There is no value on life anymore. It's all money. It's all to get gain. It's all to prosper. And none of that is wrong if it's in the right perspective and Jesus is first and you're honoring God in your life. There's nothing wrong. When Jesus said to have no other gods before him, he was including money, by the way. It is one of the gods that has risen up out of the ashes from the past and even today. And people have forsaken their families, forsaken God, and forsaken their country for the love of money. You just go to Washington itself and look at the lizard-tongued politicians up there that have sold this country down the road, and they've done it for their own personal gain. America is biting the dust nationally because of people's love for money. Now, I know Trump isn't the savior, and I know he's got a lot of problems, and we disagree on a lot of things. But I'm so glad he's trying to drain that swamp and run some of them alligators out of there. I am thrilled to death. I hope he fires every one of them. I hope he throws that whole crowd out of there and sends them home to get a real job like everybody else. It's the love of money. And he was so eat up with greed and finances and accumulation. Somebody said, if I had $1 million, I'd be happy. No, you wouldn't. You'd want $2 million. You say, I don't know if money's really that powerful or not. Well, let me tell you how powerful it is, Brother David. A man walked beside Jesus for 3.5 years. And the only reason why he didn't get saved, it wasn't over women. It wasn't over land. It wasn't over houses. The only reason why Judas didn't get saved is because he loved money. And the love of money took one of the closest men, earthly speaking, to Jesus. And he's burning in hell while I'm preaching today. There's been a lot of people go to hell for a dollar bill that they never got to enjoy. And when he got his 30 pieces of silver, he found out it wasn't what he thought it was. And he threw it down in the temple. And the Bible said he went out and hung himself. Again, I'm not against prosperity, but you hear me well. I'd rather pick up cans on the side of the road and know my name's been recorded in heaven than to be the king of a vast domain and die without God. His devotion to greed. The 5th reason why I believe all of this chemistry came together is the most important of the 5. I want to talk about demonic activity. They are interviewing Mr. Paddock's, quote, lover at this time. She is cooperating to a certain degree and answering questions. Let me tell you something she quoted the other day during her investigation that the news media has said nothing about, but I have it all documented. Upon questioning, they asked his girlfriend, has he ever said anything to you about doing a violent crime? Her answer was no, but listen to this. But many times, he would lay in the bed, and it would begin with a moan, and then it would turn into a scream. And they asked her, what was he moaning and screaming? She said he would scream 3 words, oh my God. He would toss in the bed and scream, oh my God. She said, I'm talking about a blood-curdling scream that you could hear down the road. Oh my God! Yet in his own testimony and the testimony of his family, Mr. Paddock had absolutely no religious affiliation. You see, his lost, empty soul was a perfect tool for evil to control and bring such mass murder and devastation into our country. Now, let me tell you what I believe. This is just my theory. I have nothing to back it up. But I have heard men scream that very thing in their beds. One in particular was in LaGrange, Georgia. And he died, turning from side to side and grabbing the rails of his bed, screaming, oh my God, oh my God. Here's what I believed happened. Somewhere down the road of life, somebody preached the word of God to this man. Somewhere down the road, Stephen Paddock heard the gospel, how that the blood of Jesus Christ can cleanse us from all sin. And because of his lifestyle, his lewd sex life, his financial security, his dysfunctional home, and his drive for money, when he heard that gospel message, Brother Chad, somewhere down the road, he said no to God. Maybe he heard it again, Brother Joe. I don't know how many times he was exposed to the gospel on the radio, on television, watching it in a motel room, or maybe even visiting a service with somebody in years gone by. But somewhere down the road, God dealt with this man and showed him his need for Jesus. And he's crossed that deadline. He's went beyond. He said no one time too many. He said, I'll do it some other time. But little did he know that some other time would never come. And the vastness and the presence of the Holy Ghost left him. And no doubt he would lay in bed and remember those days when God dealt with him and he had a chance to be saved. And because he known he was now possessed with an evil spirit that would drive him to depravity that we cannot even imagine, he would lay in his bed and scream, oh my God, oh my God. Hear me well, sinner friend. Many of you in this building and listening around the world today, God is dealing with you about being saved. Today is the day of salvation. Now is the accepted time. There's no better time to get saved than this very moment.